Okay, guys, up here, lesson 3.7. Okay, so this is our last lesson. So we're still dealing with translated parent functions. The big goal today is for you to be able to look at a graph and tell me back the equation. Okay, everything we've been leading up to was you have the equation and you graph it or tell me things about it. Okay, so dance move. What is this one? Yeah, that is the graph of the absolute value of x. Okay. The next one, what is this function? Yeah, this is negative absolute value of x. Okay, so what we're working up to, that's just what is that? What changed for that one? It's called a what? From getting from this first graph to the second one, what was it? A reflection about the x-axis. Okay, so we're just building up to all the different transformations, and then you're going to see them all rolled into one graph and figure out, okay, what happened here? What was the describe the transformation? What happened? It went left 4. How do I take care of left 4? Yeah. Absolute value of x plus 4. Remember the left and right moves are what? How do you remember them? They're opposite of what you might think. So like an x plus 4 goes to the left and x minus 4 goes to the right. Okay. So look at this one. Describe what happened in this one. Okay. Absolute value of x plus 3. So you can tell there's a difference when that 3 is outside of the absolute value. That's what kind of shift? Vertical. Okay. And then now let's look at the next one. So what has happened in this graph? So before we write the equation, what has happened? Yeah, so it went right 3 and down 3. So I've got two transformations here. So how do I say that it went right 3? Okay. And then how do I say it went down 3? Minus 3. Okay. So that's the equivalent of going right 3 and down 3. Everyone see what we did there? Okay. So this was just absolute value. If those graphs had all been square root of x, I mean x squared, x cubed, x to the 2/3, whatever those had been, it would be these same transformations. Okay. So what we need to have here, we need to be able to look at any graph and tell what the original parent function is. Okay. And then we need to ask ourselves, was it reflected about the x-axis? If it was reflected about the x-axis, my equation, how will I indicate that when I write the equation? Yeah, a negative in front of it. Has it moved left or right? And has it moved up or down? So I need to be able to look at a graph and tell these questions and then come back with the appropriate equation of the function. Yes. Yes, it will be. That's the last day of the 8 weeks, but I'll get it in. Okay. So now let's look at this one. So first of all, first big skill, what parent function is that based on? Absolute value of x, okay? So this may be something that I have on there that I don't gray. I mean, you should know that's the absolute value of x. Has it been reflected about the x-axis? Yes. Okay. Has it moved horizontally? And what you want to look at is look at the vertex. Where would the vertex normally have been? 0, 0. Did it move horizontally? Where did it move? 1 to the right. Did it move vertically? 4 up. Okay. Someone tell me what the equation of this function is. So it's f of x equal what? Michael is doing that? Who was doing it? Yeah. Negative absolute value x minus 1 plus 4. Okay. Perhaps. I mean, it's an equation. An equation has an equal sign. Okay. So we've got some function of x. So it's negative absolute value of x minus 1 plus 4. Okay. Pretty straightforward. You just got to be able to put all these transformations that we have together. Okay. Let's look at the next one. What is the parent function here? Yeah, this is x squared. Has it been reflected about the x-axis? No. Okay. Has it moved horizontally? Where did it move? Yeah, 4 to the left. Did it move vertically? Yeah, it moved up 2. Okay. So Jacory, what is the equation of this function? Okay, so it's x. It's going to be x. If it goes to the left, it's x plus 4 So it's x plus 4 squared. So the horizontal, whatever function you're dealing with, if it's x squared, absolute value, your plus or minus is inside of that parentheses, or absolute value or square root. So this is moving it 4 to the left. And then what's the last piece? Plus 2. And that moves it up 2. Well, the negative is just in front of everything at the beginning, okay? So the negative is just the very first thing you put if it's reflected. Okay, then you go with, okay, what's the parent function? This was absolute value. If it had been square root of x, this would be a square root, okay? So that negative sign, if you need a negative sign, goes in the very first thing you put down, okay? So we'll see that here. What is the parent function here? Yeah, x to the 2/3. Has it been reflected? Yes. Did it move horizontally? No. So no horizontal movement. Did it move vertically? Up 6. Okay. So what is this equation? F of x. Did you say negative? Negative x to the 2/3 plus 6. Okay. Pardon me? There's one other kind of problem, but it's just about decoding these equations. Okay. So let's look at the next one. I will pause. And who's got it? Cece. What's the parent function? Square root of x. Was it reflected? Did it move horizontally? Yeah, 3 to the left. And did it move vertically? Yeah, it went up 2. So because it's reflected, I'm going to say this is f of x. What's the first thing that has to go next? Negative, okay? And then it's a square root of, yeah, x plus 3. And then what? Plus 2. Okay? No, you could do that. That would be fine. If you had a parentheses here, that's fine. Doesn't hurt anything, okay? So the key is you got to make sure that this plus 3 is under the square root sign, okay? If I had done this, that's moving it up 3. Okay, that's not the same thing, okay? So this horizontal, if you're dealing with square root, your horizontal, that movement has to be under the square root sign. If it's x to the 2/3 in that parentheses, it has to all happen within that parentheses, okay? So pretty straightforward. I think the harder stuff was getting to this. This is sort of like icing on the cake. So what is this function based on? Yeah, x to the 1/3. Okay, has it been reflected? No, because normally it goes like that, okay? So what's the horizontal movement? 4 to the right. And the vertical movement? Yeah, 4 down, okay? So this equation is f of x equal what? X. So it's got to be, you have to put all of it. So the horizontal movement, x minus 4, all of that to the 1/3, okay? X minus, pardon me? That's the movement to the right. X minus 4 to the 1/3, and then how do I move it down? Minus 4 on the outside, okay? So that horizontal movement has to happen within the parentheses or the square root or the absolute value. Okay. X to the 1/3 what? Okay, x to the 1/3 minus 4, that's a downward shift. That's x to the 1/3 and moving it down 4. Okay. So what has to happen is if you're moving it left and right, you have to do that left and right movement, and then whatever your function is, if it's to the 1/3 or 2/3, all of that gets raised to that power. Okay. What's the parent function here? Yeah, x cubed. Okay. Has it been reflected about the x-axis? Yes. Okay. Normally it does this, but this one has been reflected, and then it moved where? It moved 2 to the left. Did it move up or down? No. So what is this function? This is f of x equal what? Negative x plus 2 to the third power. Okay. So negative x plus 2 to the third power is this function. Okay. Is this easier than graphing? Okay. Okay, guys, I'll pause for a second. You guys work on this one. Okay, what do you think this one is? F of x is what? So let's double check it. So it's based on absolute value. Has it been reflected? Yes. Horizontally, it moved 2 to the right, and it moved 2 down. So that's negative x minus 2 in the absolute value minus 2. Okay? You guys are getting the hang of this. So. Now, you're also going to see things like this that don't have a graph. You just got to reason through. Okay? G of x is a function derived from f of x equal x squared. How do we create g of x? We reflect about the x-axis, we shift it 2 to the left and 3 units down. Write the equation for g of x. Okay? So g of x equal. Okay, when I look at that sentence, the first thing I look for is reflections. Has it been reflected? Yeah, so what's the next thing I'm going to write? A negative sign, okay? Did it move left or right? It moved where? 2 to the left. So I'm going to write, how do I reflect that it moves to the left? X plus 2. And this is based on x what? Squared. So this is a squared, okay? And then how do I reflect that it went 3 units down? Minus 3 on the tail end of this, okay? And that's it. So here you did not have a graph, okay? I gave you a function, f of x equal x squared, and I just described the translations, okay? So it's pretty much a similar skill set, okay, that you have. Write the equation for the absolute value of x that is shifted 10 to the right and 12 up, okay? So how do I write, so absolute value of x, how do I shift it 12 to the right? Excuse me. How do I shift it 10 to the right? Minus 10. And how do I shift it 12 units up? Plus 12 on the outside of that. So that's the equation for the absolute value of x, 10 to the right, up 12. Okay. Well, this one I didn't ask you for that. Okay. I would have on this one because I did not say give the equation of g of x. So you can just put any, it doesn't matter. F of x, g of x, doesn't matter. So call it whatever you want. I should have formed the question better and said write the function f of x or something. Okay. Write the equation. So let's just, I mean, if it doesn't have it, just create it. So write the equation for a function that is the square root of x reflected about the x-axis and shifted 7 units up. So what does the reflected about the x-axis give me? Negative sign. Okay, is it moving left or right? No, so what goes here? Just x. And then how do I move it up 7? Plus 7 on the tail end of that. And that is it. Okay? Pretty straightforward? Okay. And then there may be somewhere I give you some information like this. Write the equation or g of x based on this information. So g of x. Okay. What's the first thing I take care of? The reflection. So is it reflected? Yes. I'm going to have a negative. Okay. How do I take care of the moving this thing 4 to the left? Okay. To what power? To the 2/3. And how do I move it up 7? Plus 7 on the tail end of that. And so you should be able, you should be able to check your answer by looking at this and saying, this means reflected. Yeah, that's reflected. Plus 4, that's a shift of 4 to the left. Plus 7, that's a shift upward of 7. Okay? You guys take a look at the next one, and then we'll come back and look at it. Two of them. So take a look at the next two, and then we'll come back and look at it. With the parent function, square root of x, I'm starting out with what? Square root of x plus 1, okay? So I'm moving this, what? Down to, and to the right by 4, okay? If I'm moving something to the right by 4, how would I normally handle that? Yeah, I would go minus 4, right? So here, I've got an equation, f of x equal x plus 1. If I needed to move it to the right 4, I would do what? I would subtract 4, right? And then I need to move it, what? Down 2? What would that be? Minus 2 on the tail end of this, right? Okay. Okay. So what is 1 minus 4? Yeah, it's negative 3. So this function is going to be the square root of x minus 3 minus 2. Okay. Oh, and it's reflected. Okay, did you guys see what I did there? Okay, this is what we have been doing up to this point. Up to this point, I started with this function. Okay, and I said, let's reflect it. Let's move it to the right by 4, and let's move it down by 2. Okay, so what I would do to handle that, I would say, well, I'm looking at a function, what, negative? How do I move this to the right 4? What do I do? Minus 4. And how do I move it down 2? Minus 2. Okay, this is what I've been doing up to this point of the lesson. Now I'm switching it. The function I'm starting with is this guy. Okay, so this function, how do you move it to the right 4? You have to subtract what? 4. Okay, so I'm starting with the square root of x plus 1. If I subtract 4, what does this become? Negative 3. So I see this is reflected, x minus 3 minus 2. Okay, a little bit trickier, right? But you just got to be solid with what's the transformation that I'm being asked to do. Okay, let's take a look at the next one then. So I've got f of x equal negative x plus 4. Okay. Now, if I reflect that one about the x-axis, what happens? What do you normally do to reflect about that? You stick a what? I mean, normally when you reflect it, you stick a negative in front of it. What happens when I stick a negative in front of this equation? It becomes positive. So if I've got the graph of this graph looks like this. If I reflect this graph, it looks like this. Okay, so I'm going to have g of x equal, it's a positive, okay, and then I'm going left or right. What am I doing? Left by 6. How do I normally shift something to the left 6? You add 6, right? Okay, so what would happen if I added 6 to that? What would happen? That's x plus 10. So this is x plus 10. And then how do I shift this up 7? Plus 7 on the tail end of that. Okay. You don't. You can leave it out. Okay. Okay. We'll just do another example or two. Okay. So this is probably the hardest part. Let's just do an example. Let's just say I've got f of x equal x plus 1 to the 2/3 minus 1. That's my original function, okay? And let's just say that g of x is a reflection of f of x shifted up 2 and left 3. So g of x is a reflection of f shifted up 2 and left 3. Okay, so g of x, if it's a reflection and this is positive, what am I going to be starting out with? A negative. Okay, now let's look at something. How do I shift something up 2? What do I do to shift something up 2? What do I do? Do I add 2, subtract? What do I do? Where do I add the 2? At the end of it. So I need to shift this up 2. Okay? How do I shift something to the left 3? What do I normally do? Left 3 is what? Plus 3. Okay? So this is what needs to happen. Okay? So what does this one become? X plus 4 to the 2/3. And then what's 2 minus 1? Yeah, plus 1. Let me just see, are there some like that in your homework? Yeah. So they're in the work here. So we need to do a few more of these because this kind of stuff might show up. And by might show up, I'm going to say will show up on the test. Okay. So let's do a few more of these while we're at it. Let's just say, for example, f of x equal, we'll say x plus 1. So I'm giving you 2 functions, and I need you to tell me the transformation. Okay. And going from f to g. Okay. What are the 3 things that could have happened? What are the 3 kinds of transformations we're talking about? Horizontal, vertical, and reflection. Okay. So let's ask ourselves, was there a reflection? Did anything happen horizontally? And did anything happen vertically? Okay. Now, if you go from F to G, was there a reflection? What would tell you there was a reflection? One of those will be positive and one will be negative. So I know that there was no reflection. Okay. There was no reflection in that. Okay. Now, horizontally, where do I look to? Yes. There would be no reflection. If they were both positive, no reflection. Okay. So where in this equation do I need to go to decode what happened horizontally? Under the square root, okay? So what happened to get me from here to here? So to get from 1 to -3 is what? -4, right? Yeah, so if I do a -4 here, what does that mean left or right? That went where? -4 went to the right. So I know that it went 4 to the right. How do I get from a -1 to a 4? What do I have to do? Yeah, that one is a +5. If I do a +5 on the end of that, that means I shifted where? Up 5, okay? This might be something that shows up on a test, okay? I mean, this is all fair game. If you know your transformations, you know, this is sort of a key thing to see what happens. Let's do a few more of these because I need to probably make sure in the next time I publish this book, some of this shows up in the homework. Let's do a couple of these. I think this is probably the harder thing. So let's just do another one. Let's just say f of x equal negative absolute value of x minus 3 plus 2. G of x equal absolute value of x plus 1 plus 4. Okay. And I want you to describe the transformation. The transformation of f to g. Okay. If I gave you this on a test, I would probably give you something like a box, like this, and I would probably say, is there a reflection? And then I would probably ask you for the horizontal and the vertical change. Okay. So first of all, If I go from F to G, was there a reflection here? Yes, okay. And then horizontally, where do I look to find out something happened horizontally? In the absolute value. So how do I get from a -3 to a +1? Yeah, it's +4. So if I'm sitting at -3, how do I get to 1? So was it -2, -1, 0? So I have to add 4, okay? So to get from here to here, I'm going to need to add 4, okay? To get from here to here, I need to do what? Add 2, okay? So that +4, what does that mean horizontally? That means moving it where? Left 4, okay? So this thing has moved to the left 4, and then on the tail end of that equation, that +2 means it did what? It went up by 2, okay? Feeling a little bit better? Okay. Let me just put one out here and you guys do it. Let's just do, actually, I'll do 2 of these. Let's just say, so I want you to describe the transformation of F to G. Okay, so somebody tell me, did it reflect? Yes, and what is your clue? Yeah, the signs have changed, so yes, this was a reflection. Did it move horizontally? What happened? In the parentheses, what number happened? Yeah, +2 -2, what happened? +2. X, I went from an X to an X +2, so I did a +2. Horizontally, a +2 moves you where? Yeah, 2 to the left. Okay, everyone see that? I went from X to X +2. How do I get from a 3 to a -4? How do I go from 3 to a -4? Subtract 7. Okay, so this thing went down by 7. Okay, so what you could tell, to get from here to here, you had to do +2, and you had to do -7 to get to that number. Okay, so this one's sometimes these are a little bit harder because you're not looking at a graph. When you look at a graph, you can see, oh, it moved over 2 and down 7. Here you don't have the graph to do that. Now, you could graph this one and then graph the other one and see what happened, but that's a little bit overkill, okay? Now, the other one too, let me just do the other kind just to make sure you've got it, is, give the equation of a reflected x to the 1/3 moved left 6 and down 7. So come up with a function that meets those, okay? What would this one be? It starts with a negative, okay? That's the reflection, okay? And then how do I move it to the left 6? Yeah, so that's x plus 6, okay? And it's based on which function? To the 1/3, okay? And then how do I move it down 7? Yeah, -7 on the tail end, okay? And there we go, okay? So that should be it, guys. You've got homework to do in this section. Some of the ones, like the ones we did here at the end, they do show up in the review. Okay. So we'll be doing the review in here tomorrow. Okay. So you'll see some of those problems showing up there. Okay.